Well, let me just start by thanking you for bringing your film to the wrap. Now, Andy, how did you come? What led you to decide to make a movie about Lyme disease?
Well, that's always the first question that people ask me, and it's a very telling question because the assumption is that why would anybody want to make a film about this issue? And I myself would have said the same thing if I knew somebody else who was making this film about Lyme disease. What happened was my sister had had it years ago, and I didn't take it seriously at the time. I just thought she was complaining, she was aching, she was tired, and I thought she was kind of like just starting to lose it, maybe. And then it wasn't until about 8 years later, a friend of mine in California got very sick, and she was diagnosed with MS, and then ALS, and then finally Lyme disease. And I look back on my sister, who had a Lyme disease diagnosis in New York State, and it challenged my assumptions about Lyme disease. It's not just an East Coast disease or Northeast disease; that it's very serious. It's not about people who are just a little touched or crazy. So it made me look closer at the issue, and if someone could get a diagnosis of MS or ALS, which is a death sentence, and then be saved by a Lyme disease diagnosis, so the implications of that were enormous, and so that's what started me going deeper into the subject. And the more I went, the more I realized this was a story that needed to be told.
Right. Now, Joanna, you dealt with some of the same misconceptions in your own life, didn't you, about the disease and what it was?
Yes, my daughter Ashley is 31, and since the age of 12, she's complained of joint pain, kind of a chronic fatigue that would come and go. She would have flu-like symptoms kind of once a month. And for years, I was worried that it would be lupus. I mean, never thinking growing up in California that it would be Lyme. But Ashley rode horses. She also went back east one summer. And there was one year in particular she came back from back east. And this is after she's been told by doctors, lose weight, you're overweight, you're lazy, it's all in your head, you need attention, your mother's a celebrity. You've got all these other kind of issues going on which didn't help because doctors didn't believe her. And not to mention the money we spent going to all these specialists who, I really feel that there's a lot of doctors today that are specializing, and they don't have an understanding of anything outside of their specialty or compassion for the people who are suffering from things outside of their specialty. But that's what happened to Ashley. So for all those years, she went and would steadily get worse. But this one summer, she came back, and when she went to school, she would come home every day, and she couldn't stay awake. She couldn't stay awake through her last few periods of school, and she would just sleep, and then she'd wake up about 10 o'clock at night, and then she couldn't sleep all night, and she would have this unrefreshing sleep when she would get it, and so the fatigue would get worse and worse and worse. And when you listen to these stories in your film, everybody has the same story, everybody has the same symptoms, but doctors aren't recognizing them. She was misdiagnosed with spondyloarthritis. She was put on autoimmune suppressants that really fed the Lyme because it so suppressed her immune system that the spirochete just came out and danced till dawn. And she's really paying the price for it now. She's very, very ill and is starting treatment for Lyme finally. But over the years, I must have tested her 4 or 5 times for Lyme because in my gut I said this is it, and sadly it is it.
Mm-hmm. Andy, in everything you learned while making the film, I mean, is there reason for hope at this point?
No, There's not a lot of reason for hope at this point. The reason for hope is that we get more awareness, and the film is part of bringing about that awareness. It needs to be shock and awe. We need to shake people into that awareness, because the medical orthodoxy does not know how to recognize this illness and does not know how to treat it. And it's really just I see Lyme disease as sort of a canary in the coal mine of what's wrong with our medical system and our medical research system and our insurance system. It's all there. Joanna was talking about basically our cookie cutter medicine. And this is an illness which is multi-system, multi-symptom, and we don't know how to treat that. It's not in the textbooks, and hundreds of thousands of people are falling through the cracks. This is an illness that's more prevalent than AIDS in the United States. It's probably about 10 times more prevalent than AIDS. Maybe 400 times more prevalent than West Nile virus, and we're not hearing about it. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So the goal of the film is to shake people into awareness by showing them what is really a real-life horror film.
It is a horror film.
Shaking people into awareness and then into action.
Mm-hmm. Joanna, how important do you think a film like this is?
I think it's kind of one of the most important documentaries to come along in a long time. And I'm speaking personally. Obviously, my daughter is suffering. But I know that there are millions of people out there, probably, who are suffering from things like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. And they are it never crosses their mind to check for a tick-borne disease. And we're living in a time where we've kind of moved into areas and living in areas that I guess people always, I don't understand this, Andy, people always lived in the wilderness. Is it just that the tick is more prevalent
it's a good
now?
question.
Because I mean, great outdoors and all these things, you think it's very healthy. I'm terrified to go hiking now, and it's tick season in California, so it's a very, very real thing. I've had 3 friends diagnosed in the last 2 months with Lyme. So it's in California. There's great denial about it being in California, but it's all over the country. When this film showed in New York, there were people that were writing from Sweden and Germany and places like that. It's everywhere. So I think people have to know about it. That's why the film's important. We have to ring the bell. We have to get the medical community to pay attention to it. And insurance companies don't want to cover it because if you get diagnosed late, it's expensive. And
if you get diagnosed early, it's not expensive. And I think that's important to note because chronic illness is very profitable in the United States. There's a lot of money in keeping people chronically sick and treating them with antidepressants and anti-inflammatories and painkillers, and that's what's happening to people with Lyme disease. Now, if doctors know how to diagnose and treat Lyme disease early on, that's not going to happen.
It should be a given when you go in for your yearly exam. You get a test. You get a sophisticated test, one much more sophisticated than a standard ELISA test. The ELISA test only shows in the early stages of exposure, so it usually misses. And the spirochete is shaped like a drill. It drills right into the cell wall, and then it disappears, and you have to wait for it to come out to find it. So we need a better test. And we need insurance companies to recognize, and the CDC to recognize that they need to go in and research it, get a better test, and let people know about it. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, well, thank you both.